Buying a used sailboat can seem like a dream come true until hidden problems start surfacing after you've already signed the paperwork and set sail. In this video, we're diving into the 5 most deceptive and costly issues that even experienced sailors failed to notice in time. These aren't just minor inconveniences, they're the kind of problems that can drain your wallet, jeopardize your safety, or leave you stranded far from shore. From rotting core materials to invisible structural damage and outdated systems. Cleverly disguised with a fresh coat of paint, these real-life cases are a wake-up call for anyone considering a second-hand vessel. You'll hear about what went wrong, how it could have been spotted sooner, and what you can do to avoid the same fate. So, before you shake hands on that great deal, watch this. The right knowledge could save you thousands, and maybe even your dream of cruising. Stay with us until the end, and let us know in the comments. Which of these problems would you have missed? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more real-world sailing lessons, tips, and cautionary tales from the water. Let's get into it! The sun dipped low over the marina, painting the water with a golden glow as masts swayed gently in the evening breeze. In the quaint coastal town of Newport, Rhode Island, 3 friends, Emma, Jack, and Carlos, stood on the dock, gazing at a 1985 38-foot sloop named Sea Whisper. The boat was a bargain at $45,000, a price that pulled at them in like a siren's call. Each had their own vision. Emma dreamed of sailing the Caribbean, Jack pictured leisurely coastal cruises, and Carlos, the cautious one, saw it as a bold but calculated investment in adventure. None of them, however, were ready for the hidden problems that would unravel their plans, issues they'd only uncover when it was far too late. Emma, a 32-year-old marine biologist with a passion for navigation, had spent months researching listings for used sailboats. She'd studied hull designs, rigging configurations, and keel types, but her knowledge was largely book-based. Jack, a 40-year-old mechanic, was confident his hands-on skills would keep any boat in top shape. Carlos, a 35-year-old accountant, pushed for a marine surveyor, but caved when the seller, a weathered sailor named Tom, insisted Sea Whisper was turnkey ready. The trio pooled their savings, skipped the $1,200 survey to cut costs, and bought the boat after a brief visual check and a calm sea trial. The fiberglass hull gleamed, the diesel engine purred softly, and the mast stood tall. But beneath the fresh paint and polished gel coat, trouble was lurking. 2 weeks later, during a weekend sail to Block Island, the first issue emerged. Emma was at the helm, relishing the steady 15-knot breeze pushing Sea Whisper at a smooth 6 knots. The cutter-rigged sloop, with its staysail and Genoa, sailed beautifully under the late summer sun, but as they tacked to port, a soft thud echoed from below, followed by a faint creak. Jack, inspecting the bilge, spotted water seeping through the hull deck joint. It was just a trickle, but it was enough to raise concern. Back at the marina, they hauled the boat out, revealing the first hidden problem: a compromised hull deck joint and early signs of delamination in the fiberglass. The hull deck joint on older fiberglass boats like Sea Whisper is a critical structural element where the hull and deck are bonded with mechanical fasteners and adhesive. Over decades, wave impacts, improper bedding, or neglected maintenance can weaken this joint, allowing water to creep in. Delamination, where fiberglass layers, separate due to water infiltration or manufacturing flaws, is a costly issue. On Sea Whisper, the balsa cord deck had absorbed water through poorly sealed fittings, creating soft spots invisible during their quick inspection. A boatyard quoted $12,000 to repair the joint and replace sections of the core, a figure that hit the trio like a rogue wave. Emma, flipping through the boat's manual, learned a moisture meter could have flagged the issue pre-purchase, but they'd trusted Tom's claim that the boat was bone dry. The lesson stung. Structural integrity isn't about a glossy hull. It's about what's hidden inside. As they reeled from the repair bill, the second problem surfaced during a test of the boat's 30-horsepower Yanmar diesel engine. Jack, who'd worked on car engines, thought he could handle a marine diesel. But when they tried to motor out for a day's sail, the engine sputtered, belched black smoke, and quit. A mechanic's inspection uncovered worn piston rings, a clogged fuel system, and a cooling system choked with corrosion. The engine's logbook, which they hadn't reviewed, showed spotty maintenance and no oil analysis in years. Marine diesels, unlike car engines, endure constant loads in a harsh, salty environment, demanding rigorous care. A full rebuild would cost $15,000, and a new engine could top $25,000. Jack realized a $100 oil analysis could have revealed the engine's poor health before they signed the papers. Their dream of carefree sailing was fading faster than a poorly tied knot. The third problem struck during a windy day sail off Narragansett Bay. With 20 knots of wind and a moderate chop, they hoisted the mainsail and Genoa, only to hear a sharp crack from the rigging. The starboard shroud, a vital stainless steel cable supporting the mast, was fraying at the swage fittings. Carlos, climbing the mast to investigate, found rust stains and hairline cracks in the chain plates, the metal fittings anchoring the shrouds. To the hull, the rigging, likely original from 1985, was well beyond its 10 to 12-year lifespan, especially given the boat's history of tropical sailing, where UV and salt hasten corrosion. Replacing the standing rigging, shrouds, stays, and chain plates would cost $8,000 with new sails, showing UV damage and stretch stitching, adding another $6,000. The trio hadn't checked the rigging's age or inspected the chain plates below deck, a mistake that could have led to a dismasting at sea. They learned rigging isn't just for looks, it's the boat's backbone. By now their savings were shrinking, and their excitement was tempered by the realities of boat ownership. Emma, ever hopeful, insisted they could still make it work. They patched the hull deck joint temporarily, nursed the finicky engine, and replaced only the worst shroud. But Sea Whisper's hidden flaws weren't finished with them. On a chilly October morning, as they prepped for a final sail before winterizing, they discovered the fourth problem: issues with the keel and rudder. During a haul-out to check them bottom, Jack noticed play in the rudder shaft, a sign of worn bearings. Worse, the keel hull joint showed hairline cracks, and one keel bolt was weeping rust. The keel, a 6,000-pound lead fin, was bolted to the fiberglass hull, and any weakness here could destabilize the boat. Keel bolts, typically stainless steel or bronze, can suffer crevice corrosion in the low oxygen environment where they're embedded. Dropping the keel to replace them would cost $10,000 or more. The rudder bearings, worn from years of stress, needed a $3,000 replacement assembly. The trio hadn't tested the rudder's play or inspected the keel bolts during their sea trial, assuming the boat's solid feel meant all was well. Now they faced a repair critical to safe sailing, the heat. Fifth problem emerged during a rainy weekend aboard Sea Whisper at the dock. The electrical system, a maze of outdated wiring, began failing. Lights flickered, the bilge pump stopped, and the VHF radio was unreliable. Carlos, tracing the wiring, found corroded terminals and saltwater intrusion. The batteries, likely a decade old, couldn't hold a charge, and the navigation electronics, 1990s GPS and radar, were outdated. Rewiring the boat could cost $5,000, with new batteries and electronics adding $4,000. Marine electrical systems are prone to corrosion, and Sea Whisper's wiring hadn't been updated in decades. The trio hadn't tested the electrical system thoroughly, assuming a few working lights meant all was fine. Now they risked being stranded without critical systems like the bilge pump, a potential disaster in a storm. By spring, Emma, Jack, and Carlos were drained. Their $45,000 dream boat had become a $60,000 burden. with repairs eating their savings and time. They'd learned tough lessons about buying a used sailboat. Structural integrity, engine health, rigging, keel, and electrical systems weren't mere details. They were make-or-break components requiring expertise to assess. A marine surveyor could have caught these issues for a fraction of the repair. Costs. A proper sea trial stress testing the rigging and engine would have exposed weaknesses, and a deep dive into the boat's maintenance history might have revealed its true condition. As they sat on Sea Whisper's deck, sipping coffee and watching the sun set over the marina, Emma broke the silence. "We should have known better," she said, her voice heavy with regret. Jack nodded, eyeing the frayed Genoa. "Boats are like icebergs. What you see is only part of the story." Carlos, tallying their losses, shook his head. "Next time, we get a surveyor. No debate." They'd learned that buying a used sailboat isn't just about the price. It's about uncovering the hidden problems that can turn a dream into a costly lesson. For now, Sea Whisper was theirs, flaws and all. But the open sea would wait until they could make her truly seaworthy. The marina in Newport, Rhode Island, was quiet in the early spring light, with Sea Whisper bobbing gently at her slip. The winter had been a grueling lesson in boat ownership for Emma, Jack, and Carlos. Their 38-foot sloop, bought for $45,000, with dreams of Caribbean adventures and coastal cruises, had revealed a cascade of hidden problems. A compromised hull deck joint, a failing diesel engine, fraying rigging, a suspect keel and rudder, and a crumbling electrical system. The trio had already sunk nearly $20,000 into temporary fixes, but the boat was still far from seaworthy. As the sailing season loomed, they resolved to tackle the remaining issues, hoping to salvage their dream. But Sea Whisper had more surprises in store, and the lessons they'd learned would test their resolve and deepen their understanding of what it takes to own a used sailboat. Emma, ever the planner, had spent the winter researching marine repair techniques, diving into forums and manuals to understand the intricacies of fiberglass construction. She'd learned that the hull deck joint issue wasn't just a minor leak, but a symptom of broader structural concerns. The balsa cord deck, saturated with water from years of neglected fittings, was a ticking time bomb. Delamination had spread beyond the initial soft spots they'd found, and the boatyard's revised estimate for a full repair now topped $15,000. Fiberglass boats rely on a laminate structure, layers of woven roving and mat bonded with resin, and water intrusion can weaken this matrix, compromising the boat's integrity. Emma had missed the telltale signs during their pre-purchase inspection. Hairline cracks around deck fittings, chalky gel coat, and uneven surfaces underfoot. A moisture meter, she now knew, would have revealed the extent of the damage as saturated. Balsa loses its structural strength and becomes a costly liability. The trio debated selling Sea Whisper to cut their losses, but Emma's determination to see the project through kept them committed for now. Jack, meanwhile, took on the challenge of the Yanmar diesel engine, determined to avoid the $25,000 price tag of a new unit. He'd spent hours in the cramped engine compartment learning the quirks of marine diesels. Unlike car engines, which operate in short bursts, marine diesels run for hours under constant load, making maintenance critical. The Yanmar's issues were deeper than he'd expected. The fuel injectors were fouled, the heat exchanger was clogged with scale, and the piston rings were so worn that compression was barely adequate. Jack found a local mechanic who taught him to check the engine's blow-by, a test of crankcase pressure that indicates internal wear, and the results were grim. The logbook, which they'd overlooked, showed the engine had been run hard during long offshore passages, with oil changes done sporadically at best. A $150 oil analysis before purchase could have flagged high metal content, signaling wear, but they'd skipped it. Jack managed to source rebuilt injectors for $800 and cleaned the fuel system himself. but the engine still needed a $10,000 rebuild to be reliable. Every startup was a gamble, and Jack learned that a marine engine's health isn't just about power, it's about endurance in unforgiving conditions. Carlos, the group's pragmatist, turned his attention to the rigging, haunted by the near disaster, with the frayed shroud. He'd climb the mast again, this time with a magnifying glass, inspecting every swage fitting and turnbuckle. The standing rigging, stainless steel cables like the shrouds and stays, was critical to keeping the mast upright, especially in heavy weather. Sea Whisper's rigging, exposed to tropical sun and salt for years, showed pitting and micro cracks, signs of stress corrosion that could lead to sudden failure. The chain plates buried in the hull were even worse. Rust had eaten into the stainless steel, and one plate had a crack that could have given way under load. Replacing the entire rigging system, including chain plates, was non-negotiable for safety, and the $8,000 quote was just the start. The sails, too, were in rough shape. The mainsail's Dacron was brittle from UV exposure, and the Genoa's stitching was unraveling. A sailmaker estimated $6,000 for a new set, explaining that sails lose shape over time, reducing efficiency and increasing heeling in strong winds. Carlos regretted not checking the rigging's age or pulling the chain plates during their inspection, a task that requires removing interior panels but could have saved them thousands. Rigging, he realized, isn't just hardware. It's the boat's lifeline in a storm. With the structural and mechanical issues piling up, the trio faced a new challenge when they hauled Sea Whisper for spring maintenance. The keel and rudder, already flagged as concerns, were worse than they'd feared. The keel hull joint, where the 6,000-pound lead fin was bolted to the fiberglass, showed more extensive cracking, and 2 of the 8 keel bolts were severely corroded. Keel bolts are prone to crevice corrosion, where salt water trapped in tight spaces eats away at stainless steel, invisible until the bolts are extracted. Dropping the keel to replace them would cost $12,000, and the yard warned that undetected damage could compromise the hull's integrity, risking a catastrophic failure at sea. The rudder, meanwhile, had excessive play in its bearings, making steering sluggish. A new rudder assembly, including a stainless steel stock and composite blade, would add $3,500. During their sea trial, they'd mistaken the boat's solid tracking for stability, not realizing that a loose rudder, or weak, keel could make Sea Whisper unmanageable in rough seas. A proper haul-out and tap test on the keel bolts, using a hammer to listen for a dull thud indicating corrosion, could have caught these issues early. The trio's oversight was proving costly, as the keel and rudder are the boat's foundation, dictating its ability to sail true. The electrical system delivered the final blow. During a weekend aboard, a sudden squall hit the marina, and Sea Whisper's bilge pump failed to start, letting water pool in the bilge. Carlos traced the issue to corroded wiring and a dead battery bank. The boat's electrical system, a mix of 1980s copper wiring and aftermarket additions, was a mess of brittle insulation and saltwater-damaged terminals. The navigation electronics, GPS, radar, and depth sounder, were outdated, with some components no longer supported by manufacturers. Rewiring the boat to marine standards using tinned copper wire to resist corrosion would cost $6,000. New batteries, a modern charger, and updated electronics added another $5,000. Marine electrical systems are complex, with DC and AC circuits powering everything from lights to autopilots, and corrosion is a constant threat in the salty environment. The trio hadn't tested the bilge pump under load or checked the wiring's condition, assuming a few working lights meant the system was sound. Now, they faced the reality that a reliable electrical system isn't a luxury. It's a safety necessity. By summer, Sea Whisper was a shadow of the dream that had united Emma, Jack, and Carlos. Their $45,000 purchase had ballooned into a $75,000 ordeal, with repairs still ongoing. The hull deck joint was partially fixed, but full delamination. Repairs loomed. The engine limped along, barely reliable for short trips. The rigging was half replaced, with temporary patches holding the rest together. The keel and rudder awaited a major overhaul, and the electrical system was a patchwork of fixes. The trio had learned the intricacies of sailboat systems the hard way, from the nuances of fiberglass layup to the demands of marine diesels and the fragility of aging rigging. They'd underestimated the importance of a marine surveyor who could have identified these issues for $1,500, a fraction of their repair costs. A thorough sea trial, pushing the engine, stressing the rigging and testing all systems, would have exposed weaknesses, and a deep dive into the boat's history, including maintenance logs and prior survey reports, might have revealed its troubled past. As they gathered on Sea Whisper's deck one evening, the marina alive with the clink of halyards and the cry of gulls, Emma looked out at the horizon. "We're not giving up," she said, her voice firm but weary. Jack, tinkering with a winch, gave a half smile. "This boat's teaching us more than we bargained for." Carlos, crunching numbers on his phone, sighed. "If we'd spent a little more up front, a surveyor, a real sea trial, we'd have saved a fortune." The trio had bonded over their ordeal, their friendship forged in the crucible of Sea Whisper's flaws. They'd learned that buying a used sailboat isn't just about the price or the dream. It's about peeling back the layers to uncover the hidden problems that can sink both budgets and aspirations. For now, they'd keep working on Sea Whisper, inching closer to the open sea, but they'd never again underestimate the complexity of a boat's hidden heart.